Well, buddy, we've had some good times together, but in honor of this next review, I have to let you go and try something new. And you, while you did hide my hair well, I have to admit I look like a total douche while wearing you, so... Well, I guess you know what they say, out with the old, in with the new. I guess it's time to get this show on the road. Hello everybody, I'm Zero and welcome back to Zero Reviews. Now, confused about the outfit change? Well, it's a permanent one as it fits the topic we are going to be discussing today, which is Toonami, as they have changed many times during their run. So it's been a while since I've talked about Toonami, and for good reason, as there's not that much to talk about with Toonami aside from a retrospective. However, there are two things. One is IGPX, the one anime that the Toonami crew created. The second are the Total Immersion events. Now you may remember me brushing past them in the Toonami retrospective. Now it's time I go at them in full force. The three events were known as The Intruder, Lockdown, and Trapped in Hyperspace. However, for a bit of a lengthier video, I'll be covering a bit more Toonami continuity, as you may call it, and yes, for those of you who are surprised, Toonami has somewhat of a continuity. So let's start with the basics. So our good old friend Tom started up life as a beta droid with many others similar to him. Eventually Tom manages to catch the eye of Moltar, who wishes to use him to run the Ghost Planet Industries Absolution, the spaceship we all know and love. Not too big of a backstory, but it works in this case. It's not like Toonami has an expansive lore and continuity anyway. So let's talk about the Immersion events now, starting with the one that started them all. The Intruder.
Something is invading Toonami. Your host Tom and the Absolution are in for the fight of their lives. And in the end, only one will be left standing. The Intruder. A week-long Toonami event where you can go to Toonami.com and affect the outcome. All next week, 4 to 7 p.m. Only on Cartoon Network.
I'll go by an episode-to-episode basis and then wrap up with my thoughts on the Immersion event. Now, I'm terribly sorry about the video quality of The Intruder. Episodes 2, 4, 5, and 6 all have somewhat decent quality due to someone trying their best to put them in HD. The rest, however, is not that great of quality. It really makes me wish that these were put on a DVD at some point, that way there would be some high-quality version of them out there, since this was back in 2000 when the internet was still such a new concept, and video sharing was very different back then. But I'm rambling. So originally Tom was on his own when running Toonami. We never got the now famous Sarah until the Intruder event. Though some would like to think that we got her sooner than that. Whenever the Tom 1 Toonami intro played, a voice saying hello along with those words would pop on a screen. People assumed it was Sarah, but that she was just a limited basic artificial intelligence back then, with the Intruder being the first time she was first fully active. Episode 1 starts off with Sarah and Tom having a non sequitur about a news article when an intruder alert goes off. So Tom sends the Clydes to check out the disturbance and he finds a hole in one of the engines. Apparently something's gotten into the ship. Luckily Sarah shuts the doors down and Tom goes to investigate. So he heads to one of the hangars and grabs a jetpack, or rather...
There's gotta be a better way to put this jetpack on.
Don't worry Tom, I'm sure you'll think of something. Tom heads to the hole in the ship and begins to seal it up. However, the camera pans down into the hole and we see a red figure in the darkness, only being briefly lit up by some electrical sparks as the words "to be continued" pop on screen. What I always found odd though is, where the hell did Tom get that sheet metal? He's never seen with it until then, and the Clydes don't look like they're strong enough to carry something like that. Does the Absolution just have random pieces of metal sheets that they can use all over it? Anyway, episode 2 continues where Tom plans to find out what got into the engine. He heads down to the area with the elevator with a laser pistol and searches for it. Right as he is about to confront it, he is quickly knocked out of the ship and into space by whatever it was we saw in episode 1. What's worse is that Tom appears to be knocked out as well, and we end episode 2 with Sarah calling out Tom's name as he floats off into space. What I love about this is how cocky and cool Tom tries to act, which I found as a neat personality quirk. Also, I'm curious as to what were in all those boxes since he's a robot. There's no one else that's been on the Absolution. It makes you wonder why he needs all those jetpacks in episode 1 too. I probably shouldn't think too much about it anyway. Episode 3 sees the Clyde searching for Tom in space, knocked offline by the attack from before. He gets knocked into some space debris though, which reactivates him. This allows Sarah and the Clydes to locate Tom from the space around the Absolution. After getting a jetpack, he heads back to the ship where he finds out the intruder is on 3 levels of the ship at once. We also see that the intruder is a gelatinous being that seems to have no purpose, only wishing to eat, and we see this by it eating some of the Clydes. Tom goes down to the area after hearing that the intruder is moving downwards, only to be met with a giant gaping hole of what used to be that area of the ship. Now this is slowly starting to raise the stakes. The intruder is growing, and it's not stopping anytime soon. Tom's going to have to do something about it soon, so... Episode 4 starts off with Tom going down to confront the intruder for round 2. After getting a Clyde to survey the area, Tom meets up with the intruder and is horribly outmatched. Tom uses all the functions of his new laser rifle to try and do something, but it ends up just agitating the intruder, eventually running away back to the elevator and making one last stand. He charges up a shot and blasts the intruder. However, the shot knocks him back into the elevator and stuns him to where he is now vulnerable to the intruder, who wasn't affected whatsoever. And so... And damn, like that was the twist that got us all, the fact that Tom, our host, died. It was pretty gruesome back then to watch as a kid, and it's still pretty chilling to watch to this day. Not to mention, you'd think that Tom would be the hero in this story. You'd think that this showdown would end up with him beating it back, or killing it. It really showed you how powerful this blob creature was, and it showed that just because kids were watching this, they weren't pulling any punches.
Tom is dead. The Absolution needs a new hero. Enter Tom 2.
Episode 5 sees Sarah activating Tom 2. See, Tom's memories and data were always backed up, so she transfers him into the Tom 2 body. I've got to admit, I really enjoyed Tom 2's design, if only because it was now vaguely humanoid, or rather, it was better than stubby little potbelly Tom. Anyway, we now find out that the intruder has essentially overtaken the entire starboard engine. It's pretty dire, especially seeing the blob itself show up outside the ship now, as we just see how massive this thing has grown since we first saw it. After Sarah comes up with a plan of action, Tom sets bombs in the inside and outside of a portion of the ship which cuts off the engine from the Absolution. Note that this doesn't destroy the intruder. They couldn't find an effective way to destroy it, so they made the next best choice. Cut it off and let it float into space for all eternity. However, this also leaves the Absolution at a disadvantage. It's only using one engine now, and needs repairs since despite it mainly being a broadcast ship, I'm sure it needs use of both engines, otherwise the remaining one will be overtaxed and break down, leaving them stranded in space. Episode 6 has Tom and Sarah heading towards the repair station to get their engine fixed. However, when they call the repair crew, they find out their engines were outdated. So the crew gives them 3 choices which Tom lets the viewers decide. This one took me by surprise. Not because of the whole they need 2 brand new engines thing, but the 2 people from the repair company Tom contacts. These are some of the few people that show up outside of the usual Toonami crew, and I always found that interesting. And let me say that after watching this special, I kinda prefer the Tom 2 model we got later on, where it has more flat colors instead of this metallic one they're trying to use for his body. I don't know, I never really liked the metallic coloring in the special for Tom. Episodes 7 and 8 show the repair of the Absolution, with Tom docking the ship inside of the repair station and having the engines repaired and replaced while continuing the Toonami block. The engines that won the contest were the Talon STs. Once the repairs are done, the Absolution rides off into space with a little snippet at the end of the intruder blob going by with the words, "The End?" ominously appearing on screen. Now overall, the Intruder was a great total immersion event, and the best one by far out of these three. Now the reasons why this was great. The CG is what I would call timeless, going with a style that doesn't look dated. The only thing being dated would be the quality of most Intruder videos nowadays. We got to see new parts of the Absolution, we got to see Sarah for the first time, and we even got a new body for Tom. What helped was that whatever was going on translated into the bumpers for the shows. There would be an intruder alert on the screen when they would show what's next. When Tom was gone for a while, they continued on without him. Hell, when the ship didn't have its engine, any panning shots of the Absolution were shown to not have its engine. Adding on to that, it did take a while for them to reach the repair station. Mostly because they needed time for the votes to go in and to model the new engines, so the engineless ship stuck for a while. It was a really revolutionary thing at the time, a programming block having that much level of detail and immersion, and it really was what made Toonami stand out from any other programming block on television. Or hell, Cartoon Network in general due to the certain blocks they had as well, like Cartoon Fridays. But I'm getting off track, because there are some negatives I have to talk about, and that's mostly the pacing in this thing. There are a lot of shots that are very long and drag out for too long. Aside from that, there are a lot of things you have to question. It's mostly because it kind of makes you realize, if the Absolution is a broadcast ship, why is it so massive? It literally has a skeleton crew because all you have is Tom, Sarah, and the Clydes, and those are over glorified cameras. Not to mention, Tom 1 as a model does not animate well aside from what was used before the event. He waddles like a lot in the first half of the event, and he's just too stubby to do any action sequences with. So now that the Intruder hype is over, let's go to Toonami Lockdown. Lockdown was an interesting case, as it showcased several new locations in the Absolution and some new features. Though it didn't feel the same as a grandiose adventure like the Intruder, it was good enough for me as we got to see more of Tom and Sarah banter, as well as more of the ship. So, Episode 1 starts with Sarah and Tom intercepting a distress signal. Tom suggests sending out the docks, and that's exactly what they do. The docks are humanoid trash can hybrid machines that can fly around and fight. Obviously, Tom built them as a countermeasure since the Clydes were useless against the Intruder. The Absolution begins coasting into a junkyard of old ships surrounding the other large ship in order to get closer to the ship broadcasting the distress signal. After figuring out the pattern of the ships in the junkyard, they realize that it's a trap! The two attempt to reverse the Absolution but fail, getting caught in a tractor beam that took out most of their systems and communications. However, because of ratings, Toonami must still broadcast, so the explanation is...
Oh man, what about the show?
We're still broadcasting. The frequency is modular. I can adjust faster than that thing can block it. But it takes so much energy, we can't broadcast anywhere else.
So no distress signal.
Of course, they'll run out of power unless they do something soon, and the docks are out of the question since their frequency is part of the one that was shut down by the tractor beam. Hatching up a plan, Tom realizes that if they allow the users to access the Absolution systems, then they'll be able to control the docks remotely without the need for interference. As such...
I will make this whole... Hey there. Sorry to interrupt you guys, but we're in a jam and we need your help. We have to check out this ship and need volunteers to remote pilot the docks. We've rigged it so you guys can help out. When you get a chance, go to Toonami.com and follow the instructions. Man, I'd really appreciate it. Your first mission, get inside this thing. You have an entry point here. Get in there and let me know what you find out, okay? Okay, back to your regularly scheduled program.
This tied into the game they released at the time. You would control a dock and fight your way through different areas of the large junk ship. It worked pretty well. I remember when I first saw it, I raced to my computer and loaded up the game because I wanted to help Tom out. Sadly, that didn't work out as well as I thought it would because, well, I had dial-up back then, and if you grew up with Toonami, then you should know how slow dial-up was. Episodes 2 through 4 show Tom going to different parts of the Absolution and repairing them in order to get the ship back in working condition, all while Sarah continues to update him on the viewer's progress and talking about more weapons and ammo and such. We find out that there's a pretty big hole inside of it, which is how the docks got through. The equipment is pretty old and in disarray, along with the hole being pretty old as well. Not to mention, the ship is on autopilot. No AI, no pilot whatsoever. They are pretty much dealing with a ghost ship this time. However, they hit a snag when they find out that an old destroyer droid is preventing the docks from getting to the tractor beam, causing Tom to get Sarah to tell the users to abandon the teams and go straight into full force. Now you're probably wondering, why am I not individually analyzing each episode like I did with The Intruder? Because that would just be a waste of time, and episodes 2 through 4 follow the same structure. Tom works on the ship while talking to Sarah, so there's nothing of too much importance here, aside from seeing the new areas of the ship. Episode 5 starts with Tom coming back to the bridge from a successful job at stabilizing the ship enough to where they'd be able to escape. The two then tune in to watch the fight where the viewers finally destroyed the attack droid and the tractor beam. Tom then calls the docks back, and the ship that sends the distress signal reactivates and heads off with the message finally being decoded.
It reads, "Do not attempt to enter this area. Please help. We have been caught in a tractor beam and are being sucked in."
Well, I guess we figured that one out a little late.
So with the tractor beam destroyed, the crew heads off into the rainbow vortex that is hyperspace. Also, oddly enough, there was a bit of competition in this one too, but not as big as The Intruders. There were 3 teams that you could sign up for when playing the Lockdown game: Red, Blue, and Green. Blue team was the team that won, and so they were credited by Tom at the end of the whole event. Lockdown was an interesting case, as it showcased several new locations in the Absolution and some new features. Tom literally does nothing but walk around and repair things, and it doesn't feel as suspenseful as The Intruder. It's more of a, well, we're stuck, might as well bide our time till everything gets fixed. Overall, it's a decent tie, just not as good as The Intruder in my opinion. Now, for Trapped in Hyperspace, probably my least favorite of the ties, and I'll explain after the summary. A normal trip to hyperspace for a return trip to Earth turns into a death trap as a virus known as Swayzak infects Sarah's systems. He causes the ship to go haywire and remain in hyperspace for the remainder of the tie. Tom then jacks into the system and fights off Swayzak slowly but surely before finally freeing the Absolution of the virus and saving the ship from crashing into Earth. Once Sarah is back online, they exit hyperspace so that they can make repairs to the ship. Due to Swayzak messing with the systems, a lot of stuff got damaged and messed around with. But not only did Swayzak target the Absolution, he targeted several other ships in the area. Luckily, they were all successful in driving off Swayzak. Now then, find something wrong here. It's that I can make the summary for what happens here shorter than the Lockdown and Intruder summaries. This was a very underwhelming event. Not only did Tom just go to various areas that we've seen before, but the only thing new was Swayzak himself. Everything else was pretty much reused assets, and to be honest, I could have done without this one. It didn't really do anything for me, and it's probably my least favorite out of the total Immersion events. And again, I can't summarize every detail because this Immersion event is only roughly 6 minutes long. It is the shortest out of all the Immersion events. At the very least, it did have more of a sense of urgency. However, when Tom is just running around and jacking into the Matrix, that's when it all gets boring. If anything, it's faster paced like I had asked for in The Intruder, so that's something, right? At the very least, we get to see Tom's strong commitment for Sarah here, which does come into play later. There's just one thing that bothers me though. It's this line.
I can't believe it was him. If we hadn't gotten some help at the end, we were goners.
Who was this him Tom talked about? Were they referring to how the users had to play a game that was packed along with this total Immersion event? Or were they talking about someone else? The only person I could think of would be Moltar, who would try and help them, but that is one mystery that may never be solved. And with the last one out of the way, this review comes to a close. Now I suggest you check out all of these total Immersion events, because even if I do have problems with some of them, they are still pretty fun to watch and kill time with. I do hope one of these days that the Toonami crew recovers the footage and re-releases them onto a DVD or something, because I would love to own something like that, and I feel like the event that needs it the most is the Intruder, since there isn't really a high-quality upload of the entire event. And I mean, I know, that is pretty much impossible and a fever dream at this point, but a man can dream, right? Overall, a fun short series of videos that Toonami made to high praise and success. Well, that was a fun review, but we're not done with Toonami yet, and I'm not talking about IGPX. You see, there's still one more event that Toonami has done that I have not covered. When we meet next time, we'll be doing Toonami The Intruder 2. I'll be seeing you guys next time.
高い種の合図が天命を塗り替えたカンカンカンと響いたあいつの足音形勢は深くてまして飛んでは不安定